So this is probably where Faith Story started a good couple of years ago, by wanting to remove barriers and to bridge the gap between what we know and what we're actually doing. So it was a very important part for both Jas and I to be able to look at our faith and to say, okay, so are we just ticking faith boxes and just doing Christian things? Or are we really allowing the Lord to work on our character? And what we found was there were so many barriers between what we wanted and what we knew we should be doing and what we were actually doing. And so Faith Story sort of was birthed with this idea of let's remove the barriers. Let's be bold and courageous, whatever that's going to take. How can we say, what do I need to do to make my faith as genuine and as authentic and as effective as possible? But I have to just say, that probably also means that our faith doesn't look like it's progressing as much as what we would like to pretend that it is. Because real growth is slow, but it's real. And that's what we want to focus on. So when we speak about a simple faith, it's how do we take this concept of, I want to live out my spiritual life, but I need to live it out in my real life. And just right there's a barrier. And that barrier is I've separated the two. I've said I have a spiritual life and I have my real life. And it's like, no, your real life is your spiritual life. Those two are together. So when we look at our faith, we want to say, well, what is it that I can do that is going to help me grow in my faith? And often what we do, the first mistake, is we look at others and we say, well, if only I could have a faith like they have, wow, they're so far ahead. And this is not necessarily just because you're a new Christian. Perhaps it is. It might be you've been a Christian for a really long time, but you haven't seen the growth that maybe you want or the growth that you've seen in other people. And you say, wow, look at that person. They read their Bible every day. They pray and have these incredible prayers and this close relationship with the Lord. They get involved in all these things and they share their testimonies and God is working in their life, but not in mine. It seems so distant, so far away and unattainable. So we want to simplify our faith instead of overcomplicating it and really have a look and see, well, what are the requirements? What do I need in order to have a healthy, growing faith that can be part of my faith story? A beautiful verse in Philippians chapter 2, verse 13. Philippians 2, verse 13, which I really want to use this verse to encourage all of us because it brings the purpose and the source and the motivation of our growth in our faith right to where it needs to be. Because this is not about ticking boxes, about showing off, about being able to compare with others. This is about God doing his work in us. And Philippians 2:13 says, for it is God who both gives you the will, and he gives you the ability to do his good pleasure. So where does the motivation actually come from? Well, it comes from God. So we have to not actively suppress what God is calling us to do. And we do that by overcomplicating and by creating barriers. So when we want to simplify, we say something like this, I should be praying every day. I should be reading my Bible. I should be speaking to others about the Lord. I should be growing in my faith, but I'm not doing those things. And then when I look at it and say, because I'm not doing all of those things the way that I think I should be doing, well, then I'm not going to do anything. Because it's so distant, well, then I dismiss it. And I say, maybe one day, maybe when I've got my life together, maybe when things are easier, maybe others can do it, but I just can't do it. They can have a close walk with the Lord, but it's like God's forgotten about me. He's just not working in my life. And that's a beautiful thing because the Lord wants to work in your life as much as what he wants to work in anybody else's. And that should never, ever be an excuse. And because we tell ourselves, well, I can't do all of those things, we end up not doing anything. And then we get to the next barrier. And the next one is, yeah, but Warren, I can't just do something small. I mean, like, sure, I can do more than that. Like, I'm capable of much more. And I know what that feels like. So until I'm ready to do the big thing, well, I'm just not going to do anything. And you know what? Something is always going to be better than nothing. So when you're looking and saying, I can't do everything, then I do nothing. And I'm saying, no. You can't do everything. Nobody can. Nobody goes from 0 to 120. But can you do something? 100%. And that something is going to be incredible when it is done with the right motive, and it's done because that's what the Lord wants you to do. So I was probably saved in 1999. That was like a big year. It was my matric year as well. And the Lord really worked in my life and my family's life. And I'd probably put it down to there. It might have been earlier because I had prayed the prayer, but I'm probably going to say in 99. And so I was 17 years old. It took me about 3 years before I even started reading my Bible, like literally opened my Bible for the first time. And that was in 99, I started working at the church in full-time ministry. So 2000, 2001, I'm in the thick of it. I'm a youth leader. I was ticking so many Christian boxes. But was I actually spending that one-on-one personal time with the Lord? No, and definitely not in the way that I thought I should have been. So 3 years it takes before I read my Bible. But then it took probably 16 years before I actually took my faith and I said, okay, Warren, like this needs to make like a proper difference in your character. This can't just be something that you talk about. Like you need to see how the Lord is working in you, in the areas that you are struggling with. And that takes vulnerability and self-awareness and whatever. And I'm hoping it doesn't take everybody 16 years like it did for me, but maybe it does. And I'm saying it's okay because that's the work that the Lord is doing. And it took me being willing to do something small. That was the first hurdle that I had to overcome. I had to check my ego at the door and say, okay, Warren, so you're not going to be able to do all the big things that you think you are capable of. So maybe just start with something small. For me, that was just get up early and just spend time with the Lord. And then I couldn't because my alarm was next to my bed and I would hit snooze every time. And eventually I had to admit I don't have the willpower to be able to get up when my alarm goes off. So I put my alarm on the other side of the room and then I'd have to get out of bed, walk over, and by that stage I was awake and then that worked. But that took months for me just to admit that. And then after I could do that, I could say, okay, Lord, so what are the areas that I really need to work on? And these were areas that other people had been telling me about for a long time. And I had to be like, Lord, okay, let me listen. I need to be more disciplined in my life. That is an area of my character I have to work on. And then what I did was I attached my goal of being more disciplined, which was God honoring. So I wasn't doing it just because I wanted to be better for myself. I wanted to please the Lord with it. And I say, here's my God honoring goal. What can I attach it to so that I can do it regularly, make it easy, and make it tangible and physical and simple? For me, that was doing push-ups every single day because I hated doing push-ups. I was like, okay, I just need to do the small thing. Set a small little goal. I have to do a small number of push-ups every single day. And by doing that, it's not about the push-ups. It's about me teaching myself the discipline of doing the hard thing that you don't want to do. And after a while, it was a good couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months of doing it every single day. I realized, oh, Warren, you can do this. And I started seeing myself not as an ill-disciplined person, but I started saying, wow, I actually am disciplined. I can do this. And it started spilling over into other areas of my life. So why do you leave your clothes lying around all the time, Warren? Like, maybe you just need to pick up your clothes. Yes, because you can, because a disciplined person picks up their clothes. Okay. Maybe you can put things back where they belong, because it's not like my mom and dad have been telling me that since I was 4 years old. It took a long time to learn the lesson, but then I could do that. And so I attached the goal, the character formation that I wanted with something tangible. A few years later, there was another area, because by that stage now I am spending regular time with the Lord in the morning and I'm journaling, and it grows. The first couple of times I struggled with my prayers. Like my prayers were really difficult. And it was the thing that I probably avoided the most in my time with the Lord, because then you've got to be really honest. And so it took a while for me to be able to regularly show up and just speak to the Lord openly and honestly. And as I do that, well, then I start saying, Warren, but there's some other areas in your character that when I'm reading the scriptures and I'm speaking to the Lord, it's like, look at the highlights, it's flags are coming. And one of them was, whenever there was conflict or confrontation or something uncomfortable, I would take a step back and I would go to all of my other characteristics and be like, no, but I'm patient and I'm calm and I'm all these things. And like, that's great, but this situation doesn't need you to be patient and calm. This situation needs you to step forward and say, okay, but hang on, this is not right. That took 2 years of cold showers. So I would go, and every single morning when I would say, okay, I'm going to not step away when it's uncomfortable. And I decided to take this character lesson that I wanted to use of, I want to fear the Lord above everyone and everything else. That He is the one that I respect, that I want to please the most. Which means when there are other uncomfortable areas, I need to be like, okay, but it pleases the Lord for me to deal with this. So in the morning, I would cold water. Those first few seconds were terrible every single day. But I would say to myself before I stepped in, when it's uncomfortable, I'm not going to shy away. I'm going to take a step forward. I'm going to embrace what is uncomfortable. And within 10 or 15 seconds, it was so enjoyable. And the next day, it's unpleasant again. But over time, that characteristic was formed within me of like, here's an uncomfortable situation. Let me tell you, when it came, I was so happy. I was like, I'm not taking these cold showers for nothing. I was like, yay, now I can actually put into practice in reality what I've been doing. And so I could see how the Lord would do those little things. And over time, I've tried to tie a small little practical thing, a physical thing, with a great spiritual lesson. And then I realized, it's not very different to what the Lord did. That's exactly what He did when He came to earth. He didn't come and establish a theological school. He didn't come and tell everybody, oh, you need to know all of these things. He came and He said, what are you doing? Let me tell you about bread. Let me use water and sheep and seeds. And I'm going to use the most basic things that you have in your real life all around you to teach you the greatest spiritual lessons possible. Because you know what the reality is? Even if you are a brand new Christian, you know enough to be able to do something incredible. And that is the big challenge to those of us who've been Christians for a very long time. Because it's so much easier to emphasize the knowing. It's so much easier to hide behind our knowledge, to check the boxes. But our character is it's lagging way behind. And in real life situations, when you need to be able to draw on your character, not on your knowledge, then you're lacking. I'm saying, let's just be willing to slow it down, maybe to take a few steps back and to ask, okay, Lord, so what are the areas within my character that need work? And let me find something in my life that I can attach it to, something small, something physical. So I know Ephesians chapter 5, great passage, read it so many times. I use it often in counseling, in marriage counseling, and I know what it says. Husbands, love your wives more than you love yourselves. And I'm like, okay, you know how difficult that is. Not because my wife is difficult, but because of who I am as a person, to prioritize her. So what I do when I make coffee or tea, I always put her cup on the right-hand side, not because she's right all the time, but because I want to put her first. And I make things from the right. So maybe if you're left-handed, then put it on the left. But I use that as a simple reminder to prioritize my wife in my life. And so thankfully, she enjoys drinking tea or coffee in the morning, first thing. So I get that reminder when I make it for her. And I'm like, and often I'll put the cups in the microwave and then they turn around. And when I take them out, they're the wrong way. And what do? I'm like, no, it must be this way around. And there the reminder is. And I don't know what it is within your life that the Lord is going to reveal to you in your time with Him. Maybe you need to trust Him more. Maybe you need to surrender more. Maybe obey Him more. Whatever it is, look for a existing thing, a habit, a routine, something that you do regularly. Attach it to it and give it the greatest purpose, because ultimately what we're doing is we're wanting to be more like the Lord himself, more Christ-like, to grow in our character, to allow him to eradicate things and to build what needs to be there. There's no greater purpose. That is our identity. And we are reinforcing that identity by using these small little things. Before you leave in the morning, before you step over the threshold into the world, stop every single morning and say, Lord, I'm trusting you with this day. Then take a step. Because you're going to have to walk out your door every day. So then just use it. Find those little moments, something that's going to work for you, and attach it to this great purpose. So salvation, when we understand what God means with salvation, well, then it helps us in our approach to our Christian walk, of being kind to ourselves, of being willing to just do a small thing. Salvation is not a one thing. It's a multifaceted, very complex thing. So when I say I was saved in 1999, what I mean is that's the time that I can remember consciously giving my life to the Lord and saying, Lord, I want to live for you. In that moment, there is a part of salvation that took place. And that is what we call in Christian terms justification. It's just as if I died, is the easy way of trying to remember it. It's that my life was then given to the Lord, and his life was given to me. There was an exchange that took place. So when God looks at me, he doesn't see Warren in his sinfulness and in his old nature. He sees the Lord Jesus Christ's nature and his perfection in me. That's what he sees. That is the exchange that takes place. It's once off. And in that moment, God seals me with his Holy Spirit. God's Spirit takes up residence in my life. It's a spiritual thing. It's not like an outward thing. I didn't feel anything different. There were no like sparks or fireworks or anything. But gradually my life changed after that, because now I could have access to a new life. There was a new motivation within me. There was new prompting. There was a spiritual aspect to the things that I could look at in life and I could understand. So that's the past part of being saved, the justification. But then I entered into the second phase, which is called sanctification. And that sanctification is the process of being set apart. It's the process of being made different. And often the Bible would use the word holy, because that's what holy means, set apart and made different. It sounds weird when I say I'm being made holy. It's got like a bad connotation. But what is the practical of that? The practical is I take these small steps, little bit by little bit, every single day. And sometimes it takes 3 years, sometimes it takes 16, sometimes it takes 30 for me to work on a specific area of my character. And I'm going to be working on my character until the day the Lord calls me home. It is a lifelong journey. I am being saved. I am being sanctified, set apart, and made holy. And that is a beautiful part of the journey. And then ultimately, the third part of salvation is when God says, okay, now the work is finished, because that's his promise. He says, the work that I have started, I will finish. God will finish the work that he started. Isn't that beautiful? That takes place the day that I die. And that is my glorification. When I am made perfect, when I don't have to deal with my sinful thoughts, my sinful body, my sinful nature, that's all done away with. And I'm in the presence of God in his glory. And I look forward to that part of my salvation. And when I can see my salvation as not just a past event, but also a process, well, it helps, because it changes my approach to what I expect of myself. It's not a case of, well, Warren, you're a Christian, you're supposed to get everything right. Like, no, Christ got everything right, and God sees me as right in his eyes. But now I've got some work to do that God's going to help me with. He's going to give me the will to do it, and he's going to give me the ability. I just have to show up. And so that's what this really is. What are the ways that I can just show up every single day? The small little things that I need to do that will make a really big difference. Because these little things that I'm doing are not the things that make me a Christian. I am a Christian. That is my identity. These little small things that I do are what help me live out my new identity, my Christian faith, and help me become more Christ-like. Because it's a beautiful thing. We're not trying to pretend to be something that we're not. We're just trying to get our real life to match our genuine spiritual life, which is, I am Warren in Christ. I am made new. I am whole. I have all of the spiritual blessings that I need. So how do I get there? I get there by starting small. I get there by just picking one thing to work on and doing that one thing to the glory and the honor of the Lord. And I do that by keep showing up day after day. And there's going to be conflict, and I'm going to have moments where I take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. And that's exactly what Romans chapter 7 speaks about, where Paul says, I've got this conflict within me. The things I want to do, I don't do. But ultimately, God gives us the victory. And I want to encourage you as you establish your own little things that you want to do, and you work through not just the knowing, but the doing part of it. I want to encourage you to read Colossians chapter 3. And I'm going to just read verse 17 that says, whatever you do in word or in deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God the Father through him. Read Colossians chapter 3, the whole chapter, from verse 1 through to 17, and pick your small thing. Attach it to something great that God is going to do. And you're going to see the journey that you're going to walk with him is going to be incredible. May God truly and richly bless you on this journey.